What breaks a warrior who's lived for 900 years? What makes the most powerful Jedi Master in the galaxy choose exile over another confrontation? After their brutal duel in the Senate chamber, Yoda made a choice that shocked everyone. He fled. He went into hiding on Dagobah and never attempted to face Palpatine again. But here's what most fans miss. This wasn't cowardice. Yoda had discovered something absolutely terrifying about Darth Sidious during their fight, something that shattered his understanding of the Force itself. Today, we're breaking down exactly why Yoda was genuinely terrified of ever crossing lightsabers with the Emperor again. Let's rewind to that Senate chamber battle in Revenge of the Sith. On the surface, it looks like an even match, two masters at the peak of their abilities. But if you pay close attention, you'll notice something disturbing. Yoda isn't winning. He's barely surviving. According to the Revenge of the Sith novelization by Matthew Stover, Yoda experiences a revelation mid-battle that changes everything. He realizes the Jedi Order had been fighting the wrong war. The Sith hadn't just survived, they'd evolved beyond what the Jedi could comprehend. Here's the critical line from the novel. Yoda understood that he had lost before the duel even began. The Jedi were guardians of the Old Republic, trained for 1,000 years to fight the last war. But Sidious, he was something unprecedented. A Sith Lord who had reshaped the very foundations of power. Think about what Yoda actually says in the film. Into exile I must go. Failed, I have. That's not just admitting defeat in one battle, that's accepting a fundamental inadequacy. But the terror goes deeper than military strategy. During their confrontation, Yoda discovered something that contradicted everything the Jedi believed about balance. When Sidious hurls those Senate pods at Yoda, and when he unleashes his Force lightning, pay attention to Yoda's reaction. He's not just defending, he's struggling. In the Clone Wars animated series and various canon novels, we learn that the dark side had been growing stronger for decades. The Sith rule of two concentrated dark side power into just 2 individuals, while the Jedi spread their light across 10,000 members. Sidious had access to depths of dark power that made him fundamentally stronger than any single Jedi could be. But here's the truly terrifying part. Yoda realized that confronting Sidious directly was actually feeding the dark side. Every time they clashed, the conflict itself empowered Palpatine. It's revealed in supplementary materials that Sidious had been orchestrating galactic-scale suffering, the Clone Wars, Order 66, the genocide of the Jedi, to charge himself with dark side energy like a battery. According to sources from Wikipedia and discussions in the Star Wars lore community, Yoda came to understand that Sidious had achieved something the ancient Sith could only dream of. He'd made himself the focal point of the dark side itself. Fighting him wasn't like fighting Darth Maul or Count Dooku. It was like fighting the conceptual embodiment of evil. The Force itself had tilted in Sidious's favor. Now, let's talk about what really got inside Yoda's head. Palpatine didn't just outfight Yoda. He outthought him, outmanipulated him, and proved that the Sith understood the Force in ways the Jedi had forgotten. Consider what Sidious accomplished. He hid in plain sight on Coruscant, the Jedi Temple's doorstep, for decades. He manipulated galactic politics to create a war that destroyed the Jedi Order from within. He turned Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One himself, into his apprentice. And he did all of this while the Jedi Council, with Yoda at its head, sensed nothing until it was far too late. According to the Darth Plagueis novel and various canon sources, Sidious had studied every Jedi weakness for generations. He knew their combat forms, their Force techniques, their philosophical blind spots. He'd practiced against Jedi fighting styles using his master's teachings. When Yoda finally faced him, Sidious had already won the real battle, the battle of preparation and knowledge. But there's something even more personal happening here. Discussions on Reddit's Arsh More installation highlight how Sidious specifically mocked Yoda during their battle. "Your arrogance blinds you, Master Yoda," he says. But it's more than a taunt, it's the truth. Sidious had proven that the Jedi's confidence in the light side was their fatal flaw. Yoda had to face the fact that his 1,000 years of wisdom hadn't prepared him for Sidious. The Jedi philosophy he'd championed had failed catastrophically. That kind of psychological defeat, realizing your entire worldview was insufficient, that's the kind of thing that breaks even the strongest spirit. Here's where Yoda's fear becomes rational rather than emotional. After their duel, Yoda didn't just fear Sidious personally. He feared what another confrontation would mean for the galaxy's future. In the aftermath of Order 66, Yoda had to accept brutal math. He and Obi-Wan were the last two Jedi Masters standing against an Emperor who commanded infinite military resources, political control of the entire galaxy, and Darth Vader as his enforcer. If Yoda died challenging Sidious again, the Jedi Order would be completely extinct, with no one to rebuild it. The Empire would have won, permanently. But Yoda learned something crucial from his defeat. Something revealed in his training on Dagobah and in his Force Ghost communications. The way to defeat Sidious wasn't through direct confrontation. It was through a new generation, through Luke Skywalker. In both The Empire Strikes Back and supplementary materials, we see that Yoda spent his exile studying with Qui-Gon Jinn's Force Ghost, learning about immortality and a different understanding of the Force. He was essentially admitting, "I cannot defeat Sidious with the old ways. Someone else must find a new way." Fan discussions on platforms like Quora consistently point out that Yoda's fear was actually strategic wisdom. He'd seen Sidious's full power, understood the futility of another Jedi of his generation confronting that darkness, and made the hardest choice a warrior can make, stepping aside. Think about how terrifying that must have been, accepting that you, the greatest warrior of your age, are simply not enough, that the problem is too big for you to solve alone. But there's one final layer to Yoda's terror that most people overlook. Sidious enjoyed the fight. Watch that duel again. Palpatine is laughing. He's having fun. For Yoda, this was a desperate struggle for the galaxy's survival. For Sidious, it was entertainment. That imbalance in stakes reveals the fundamental difference between them. Yoda carried the weight of the Jedi Order, the Republic, thousands of dead Jedi, and the galaxy's freedom on his shoulders. Sidious carried nothing but ambition and the thrill of absolute power. One fighter was burdened by everything he was trying to protect. The other was liberated by having nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The Revenge of the Sith novelization describes Yoda feeling the dark side closing around him, like a drowning man feels the ocean. That's not just powerful imagery, that's existential dread. Yoda realized he was fighting in an environment where his opponent had every advantage, where the very field of battle was stacked against him. And perhaps most terrifying of all, Sidious wanted Yoda to try again. He was baiting the Jedi Master to return, to make another attempt, because Sidious knew he would win. The Emperor even let Yoda escape, because a living, defeated Yoda hiding in exile was better propaganda than a dead one. So was Yoda afraid? Absolutely, but not in the way you might think. He wasn't afraid of death or pain or even failure. He was afraid of the truth he'd learned, that Darth Sidious represented a form of evil that Yoda's generation couldn't defeat, that the light side alone, as the Jedi had practiced it, was insufficient, and that rushing into another confrontation wouldn't be brave. It would be suicide that accomplished nothing. Yoda's fear led him to the only logical choice: prepare the next generation and hope they could find a way he couldn't. And as we know from Return of the Jedi, he was right. The question is, what do you think? Was Yoda right to fear Sidious, or should he have tried again? Let me know.